Yeah, so, in one of my previous videos, I alluded to doing away with the left and simply reading from the right. I'd like to think I've made a good case for doing so, and now I'm going to give an example as to why. So I've chosen two random pieces of news featured on Real Clear Politics, a left one and a right one. So two things before I get this started. In the interest of not making this video too long, I'm probably going to split this one into two videos. This will be the left one, and the next one will be the right one. The other thing, for those that know me personally, I have a code of conduct when dealing with political issues. Do not start off by insulting your adversary from the get-go. You look petty and stupid. Calmly dismantle their ideas as eloquently as you can. Build up some credibility, and then once you have established that, then you can go for the jugular and eviscerate them like a drunken sailor who's just down the trough of moonshine. So seeing as I'm going to be cranked for this, most of this I'm going to be ranting and raving, point out a whole load of bullshit, inconsistencies, basically do everything short of questioning the author's sexuality. On the second one, virtually nothing because it will all make sense. Now, with that being said, I'm going to disregard all of that seeing as this is not my first tango dismantling the following author, so I'm just going to call him a fucking idiot from now till the end of this video. On the left we have a Guardian article by Robert Reich, the retarded economist who evidently knows fuck all about economics, and miraculously even less about politics, as we shall see. Reich is about as dim-witted as someone who reads The Guardian on a regular basis, and yes, I did add that little caveat just so I don't inadvertently include myself in said dim-witted reader base. I love how this guy masquerades as some friend of the working class, but he was a Secretary of Labor under Clinton. Clinton! The name most synonymous with Democratic corporate cocksucking, or in Reich's case, being spit-roasted and pumped with enough jizz from both ends to induce another damn species. This guy makes $2,500 an hour doing lectures, and speaking fees of $40,000 an hour, and also paid handsomely for corporate events. I think someone who can potentially earn a lot of people's yearly income in an hour is perfectly clued in to the woes and troubles of regular middle-class America. Fucking idiot. So first up, beware of this deadly mix, oligarchic economics and racist nationalist populism. Oh, for fuck's sakes, even the title has me already pissed off. He has no credibility to talk about economics. And what the fuck is racist national populism? Seriously, I have a question for the left. I'd love for them to answer this. Why is it that you lot can have a rainbow coalition gel around the world view, funnily enough propped up by some fucking Germans in the 19th century, but if the other side wants to coalesce around the ideas of, say, an Englishman in the 17th century, now you call them allied with white supremacy? I know it's linguistic propaganda, but my point still stands. I've seen Trump's base. You're pretty much welcomed with open arms if you support a pro-America agenda, as if this is some kind of moral crime. Look at the Hispanic population in America. They are shifting massively towards the GOP. You're just going to call them all racist, are you? Of course they are. It's not like the Democrats have any sane policy proposals. Think about it. Think of the left if they had no identity politics as a cornerstone of their platform. What would they actually run on? Yeah, exactly. Fucking hell, all of this and I'm not even past the headline yet. A treacherous alliance is growing that will undermine democratic institutions in the US and elsewhere. Undermine democratic is no, you know what? Fuck it, I'll just use this.
We're gonna die!
That's what it sounds like in every Democrat's head right now, and it's great fun. The United States presents itself as a beacon of democracy in contrast to the autocracies of China and Russia. This is obviously before the fortification of 2020 at the hands of Beijing. Yet American democracy is in danger of succumbing to the same sort of oligarchic economics and racist nationalism that thrive in both of these powers. No, it isn't, you alarm. Well, if you look at the economy, the inflation, the debt, and the spastic imbeciles in charge is not exactly the best word, but you know what I mean. I sort of get the impression, though, he means Trump. I just have a hunch, a gut feeling, so to speak. After all, it wasn't long ago that Donald Trump, there we go, who openly admired Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, encouraged racist nationalism in America while delivering much of the US government into the hands of America's super rich. Okay, I'm gonna interrupt my own video just to make this point. This is one of the stupidest things I have ever read, as if Trump has any say over which business entities or people donates to his opponents. And secondly, this is not the fault of Trump. This is the corruption of politicians who take corporate cash. This has nothing to do with Trump. And this dipshit fuckhead at no point in this entire article mentions any of the ultra-rich donating to the Democrats, as if this is exclusively a Republican Party phenomenon. What fucking world do you live in? Bring out the guillotines. I may have had some coffee. And now state-level Republicans are busily suppressing votes of people of color and paving the way for a possible anti-democratic coup. By doing what? What the fuck does that even mean? How would you even go about doing this on a state level? How do you suppress votes specifically of only non-whites? While National Republican Party excuses the attack on the Capitol, calling it legitimate political discourse, and censors Representatives Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, the only two congressional Republicans serving on the panel investigating that attack. Yes, the two rhinos who were hand-selected specifically by Satan's daughter, Nancy Pelosi. And yes, that is legitimate political discourse. You know what's not legitimate political discourse? Causing over $2 billion worth of private property damage, rioting in the wake of a career criminal dying from a fucking drug overdose. America's oligarchic wealth, meanwhile, has reached levels rivaling or exceeding those of Russia and China. During the pandemic, America's 745 billionaires increased their holdings by 70%, adding $2.1 trillion to their wealth in just over a year. Oh, I wonder what could possibly have fucking done that. Could it have been Democrat cities enacting lockdowns and engaging in the largest wealth transfer in the history of our species, maybe? You fucking disingenuous piece of shit. You know, the French Revolution had some good ideas. A portion of this wealth is going into politics. As early as 2012, more than 40% of all money spent in federal elections came from the wealthiest of the wealthiest. Not the top 1% or even the top 10th of the 1%, but from the top 1% of the 1%. Notice the omission of which party they are donating to. I imagine there is probably a reason for that. Now, some of this wealth is supporting Trumpism. Peter Thiel, a staunch Trump supporter whose net worth is estimated by Forbes to be $2.6 billion, has become one of the Republican Party's largest donors. And last year, Thiel gave $10 million each to the campaigns of two protégés, Blake Masters, who was running for the Senate from Arizona, and J.D. Vance from Ohio. Oh, wow! Thiel spent $20 million on two candidates. What did Zucker spend on the 2020 election? Oh, yeah, $400 million. What do you suppose $400 million buys you? A general election, apparently. Moving on! Thiel is also backing 12 House candidates, 3 of whom are running primary challenges to Republicans who voted to impeach Trump for the events of January 6. It's not just Republicans. Last year, at least 13 billionaires who had previously donated to Trump lavished campaign donations on Democratic Senators Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema, according to an analysis of Federal Election Commission records. Okay, does that not tell you that they, at least as far as these two are concerned, have been donated to for saner policies? I could be wrong. The combination of oligarchic wealth and racist nationalism is treacherous for democratic institutions in the US and elsewhere. In case this wasn't blindingly obvious already, racist nationalism is just make America great again because identitarian policies is all these idiots have. Capitalism is consistent with democracy only if democracy reduces the inequalities, insecurities, joblessness, and poverty that accompany unbridled profit-seeking. Woo! Sweet Lord, where do I begin with this? Okay, firstly, this is how you know this guy is a big government simp. Bear in mind, this guy just said capitalism generates joblessness and poverty without a shred of evidence to support that claim. I'll be generous and say, the only time I can think of something like this is in the event of, say, automation. But even then, someone needs to get the metals, make the machines, and maintain them. Products become cheaper because costs are reduced. The consistency with democracy is utterly farcical. Democracy is how representatives are elected. It has fuck all to do with private enterprise. This man simply wants to take from the productive and redistribute wealth because it's good for his own pocket. That it's the state's job to play the great corrector. He's an economic interventionist, also known as a thieving bastard. For the first 3 decades after the Second World War, democracy did this. The US and war-ravaged Western Europe built the largest middle class the world had ever seen, and the most buoyant democracies. I could make the case post the First World War, Republicans taking over the United States producing the Roaring Twenties did that, as well as the creation of a staggering amount of wealth. The arrangement was far from perfect, but with the addition of civil rights and voting rights, subsidized healthcare in the US Medicare and Medicaid, and a vast expansion of public education, democracy was on the way to making capitalism work for the vast majority. So you can tell by this rhetoric in the mind of Reich, democracy means the expansion of the state. Hold that thought. Then came a giant U-turn, courtesy of Ronald Reagan in America and Margaret Thatcher in Europe. Deregulation, privatization, globalization, and the unleashing of finance created the full Monty. Abandoned factories and communities, stagnating wages, widening inequality, a shrinking middle class, political corruption, and shredding social support. Democracy was on the way of making capitalism work for the vast majority, the man says. I notice he doesn't speak about the state of the UK or the US at the time of the election of Reagan or Thatcher. See, in the US and the UK, people can vote. And in 1980, Reagan won 489 points to Carter's measly 49. And in 1984, he won 525 points to Mondale's 13. In 1979, Thatcher's Tories won 339 seats, Labour 269, and then in 1983, they won 397 seats to Labour's 209. So in both their re-elections, they got an even bigger share of the vote. The population spoke and gave a resounding fuck you to their big government planning predecessors. So clearly, what came before the big U-turn, as you put it, was not working for the majority. Fucking hell, don't come and talk to me about political corruption, you Clintonian cocksucking shill. What a joke this dickhead is. The result has been widespread anger and cynicism. That goes well with my outburst. Even before the pandemic, most people were working harder than ever, but couldn't get ahead, and their children's prospects weren't any better. Define get ahead. Based on what metric, what time frame, and compared to what? Do you see how empty and vacuous all of this is? This is just mindless word salad. This is cliched campaign rhetoric. It's completely hollow. It means nothing. More than 1 out of every 6 American children was impoverished, and the typical American family was living from paycheck to paycheck. At the same time, a record-high share of national wealth was already surging to the top. Yeah, he's not going to list the years here, and I know why, because I have done my research and I know the statistics, because I did them in a previous video. But it was during Obama's years that happened, and it was at a faster rate as well, almost 3 times higher than the 4 presidents who preceded him. It was during Trump's reign that the middle class actually got the bigger paycheck, for the first time since the Reagan years, ironically. Starting last July, America did an experiment that might have limited these extremes and reduced the law of racist nationalism. Please explain to me how, in fuck's name, printing money and thereby destroying the nation's work ethic, devaluing the dollar, and hence taxing the poor helps reduce the law of racist nationalism, whatever the fuck that means. Oh wait, I just realized that means fascism. Oh, I see, it's getting a bit stale now, so now they have to try shaking it up a bit. Always with the branding, these twats. That's when 36 million American families began receiving pandemic payments of up to $3,000 per child, $3,600 for each child under 6, which is just another expansion of the welfare state, plain and simple. Presto, child poverty dropped by at least a third, and the typical family gained some breathing space. But this hugely successful experiment ended abruptly in December when Senator Joe Manchin joined 50 Republican senators in rejecting President Biden's Build Back Better Act, which would have continued it. They cited concerns over the experiment's costs, an estimated $100 billion per year, or $1.6 trillion over 10 years. But that's less than big corporations and the rich will have saved on taxes from the Trump Republican tax cuts of 2018. Repeal it and there would be enough money. The cost is also less than the increase in the wealth of America's 745 billionaires during the pandemic. Why not a wealth tax? The experiment died because, put simply, the oligarchy didn't want to pay for it. Holy fucking hell. This is just... I hope for the sake of my blood pressure, this man is just pushing rhetoric as a cynical political ploy, because if he actually believes this man is a dangerous retard. Hugely successful. Oh yeah, because causing massive amounts of inflation, which is a tax on the poor, is hugely successful. Oh, who cares about the people that don't have tangible assets or who are on a fixed income? Fuck those people. We have short-term political gains to make. This is a level of economic fantasy concocted in the mind of a child. Oh, we can just tax the rich more. How is this any different than AOC? Seriously, he says this as if this will have zero repercussions at all. It's not like the rich will hide their money and then everyone else will get taxed to the moon, even though that's what always happens. If you want a strong economy, you get more money into the hands of the big three. The investors, the producers, and the consumers. The investors front the capital, the producers make the goods, and the consumers purchase them. Fuck's sake, the experiment died because, put simply, the oligarchy didn't want to pay for it. Or, you stuck-up elitist prick, people are not as economically illiterate as you are, and no increased government spending is going to drive inflation. Fuck, his last sentence, I can already feel my pulse beating through my chest as I'm just sitting here recording this bullshit. But anyway, what did we learn from any of this? All of the finer details and facts were provided by me. The rest of this was empty bullshit campaign rhetoric, the likes of which has been the staple of democratic politics for over a century. I said before, the left will always push for more state dependency, and if you've noticed, that was the recurring theme of this entire article. That is this gig solution to literally every single problem, and hence proves my point. Buckle up for the next video. And that's all for today. Coming up, round 2.